We're gonna do it now. A little late on the record, but we'll go back to it.
Another barrier I have is quality investors. And
Mm,
so, and I use that term in terms of not just money, but anyone, like in our church, anyone who's serving the next generation is investing in the next generation. And so I'd say that in view of qualified and equipped people to do the work, qualified and equipped people to talk about the work outside of the space, and then of course investing financially and with resources. There tends to be like even in the school system, a power drain in terms of families who would advocate the the resource drain and all that stuff. And so
mm,
if people would just stay, and if people would choose to put into all the different places, that would be much easier to get the goals done. And the last thing I had is sustained funding and access for all populations. Um, and so having something here, specifically, I think in the spaces that we're all representing, it's for every child, it's for all people in populations, but not everyone can get access to it. And not, there may not be enough funding to get it to all the people who need it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Okay, so you can see how, of course, when you're doing this together with your teams or in your different coalitions or working groups, you would take a lot more time to really flesh these out and to see some of these clusters. So definitely some stuff around, resource and investment. Also things, and I think, Kyle, there's very specific structural elements and mental model elements around segregation and racial separation and things like that. And also, it sounds like going into some of the ability to actually have authentic relationship, right? Like it's all kind of connected. And what does that do to trust? So these are some things that you might start to see how, yes, we are each coming from our very own unique perspectives. And there are some patterns that we're able to identify across the system. So this is when we start to look out across the sea of icebergs and see what's ahead, see what's popping up. So for the next step, though, I want to give you another really concrete tool that once you've identified one of these key areas, you can really zoom in and really begin to look for those non-obvious insights of what's really going on beneath the surface. Okay, so what do you think about pulling out this lack of authentic relationships? Because I think it's built into a few of these other things, and it will show well some of the patterns that we're going to be uncovering. Does that sound okay to you? To dive into that lack of authentic relationships piece? Okay. I'm not seeing anyone giving a big no way, so I'm gonna go for it. Okay, so now I'm going to move over here. This is a tool called Analyzing Cause and Effect. Another thing that we sometimes say is we call it an upstream and downstream analysis. If you think of a river, it all kind of flows together and we start to see how things are all connected. So, and again, going back to that idea of zooming in and zooming out that we talked about last time, we're zooming out to see all of these different forces across the system that are working to keep it stagnant and these same outcomes to keep showing up again and again. But when we zoom in, we recognize that it's not just one thing, it's not just one person, but it's these patterns of behaviors and systems that are going to continue to maintain that. So we're going to work on a tool to help us uncover those things. So you can see, I'm going to give you like the behind the curtain voice track too, because I want you guys to be able to learn and do this. So it's just setting up a very simple T-chart here. And what we're going to do is put our force here that we have selected. So we're going to be analyzing the cause and effect of the fact that we see a lack of authentic relationships right now in the system, and that is a challenge. So we would, circle challenge here, just write challenge. And then for your data collection, you would write who you're having this discussion with. In case you have any questions, you can go back and ask for clarification. So what we're going to do is begin with some of these upstream causes. So what are the things that are causing or leading to this lack of authentic relationships? Now, I can give you an example, which is one of the other post-its that you had, right, around segregation. And, there's environmental segregation, like rural, urban, but then there's very deliberate racial segregation from around how, communities are designed and things like that. So we can get into some of that, but. So feel free to just go ahead and shout out anything else you're seeing.
I think resistance to be transparent is a huge issue. And I guess the social apprehension.
Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me that the first thing you said was something about was resistance to change, or
the transparency. Not really want to be completely open with other people because of all the reasons we could possibly think of, but just it doesn't allow for authentic relationship to exist.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean? What do you think all those reasons are, or some of those main reasons are?
Okay, all right. So one, I think racial tension and dynamics is the number one reason, especially in our region. And I think that more recently, not recently, it's been going on for a while, but it's been now more public because of politics. Because it's now no longer this thing of like, if I believe this thing about you or this thing about you, now people associate it with political stances. And so that was less taboo than race, but now that's become a whole different taboo. And I think that a lot of that comes down to miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. Right. Anyone else? What are some of the things that you all are seeing that might cause this lack of authentic relationships?
Personal biases.
And how do those show up?
Just in the way that we interact with people, how we prejudge people based on something that we've heard from others and not really had the opportunity to interact with that person individually.
Yeah, so we're using these judgments, but we haven't actually had those experiences ourselves. We're just carrying the judgments forward.
Yeah. And I think another thing is just burn bridges. So I've tried to be authentic before. I tried to reach out before. I tried to unite before. And it either wasn't received well or there was an intentional rejection, whatever it may be. But I think burn bridges, and that's not just across race, of course. That can be from teacher to educator to administration, parent to school system.
Related to that, I think, is mistrust of people in various positions of power. Power being broadly defined.
And that probably relates to that those hurts and wounds from past experiences as well. Yeah, or narrative. Okay, great.
And I think
go ahead.
On top of that too, like, that power differential, but then like, where's my value in all of this? So things are shifting. Where's my value?
So is that
happening.
just, I want to be sure I understand. So is that like wanting to see your own value or not feeling your own value?
Oh, probably a little bit of both, like, so if I'm in law enforcement and we're saying we want practice to shift away from these larger punitive things, then what is my value as law enforcement then? That's what I'm here for. That's what I do. And if you're saying we're going to shift things, then where's my value here?
Okay, great. So we just got the 5-minute warning from BT, so I want to move us to the next side, but you can see how we just kind of peel back the layers of this onion, like what's going on here. There are new ideas. No one is wrong, right? This isn't about consensus in this moment. It's about really hearing all of the different perspectives and experiences that happen around this force in the system. So now getting to see some of these things and these causes, what is the effect that this lack of authentic relationship has on the system? What are some of the results of that we see?
There's a resistance that is built up, and there's a blockage, or how can I say, just a resistance, even though the person that is presented may be authentic in what they're doing. I think because of previous situations, we judge the new situation based off past experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else?
Silos develop between people, between systems.
Because of those silos, there's no alignment of resources among partners or other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think these things create the silo to make everything just keep happening. It incubates the issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like people would rather, even though they may be wanting help, they rather be content in the situation they're in than to receive help because of the lack of trust. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like Seth and BT were saying, that's a protection technique, right? If they are having these hurts and wounds from past experiences, the risk reward might not be there. It's like I might as well just stick with what I know than risk getting hurt again. Okay. So of course I would love to keep having this conversation with you all, but what I hope that you see with this tool is that there are some really important things and patterns that are happening underneath some of these key forces that you see. So if we said, hey, a lack of authentic relationships, that's really bad. What I should do is go knock on doors and make, some new friends. But if you went without some of the understanding of these personal biases, these different lack of trust, or this history of wound and defeat, or some of these other upstream causes, and then the effects that it produces, it would be really challenging to actually have the impact that you're seeking. So one of the things that you can do is to really be able to see how these things connect with one another and create these patterns. So, for example, just taking this this idea, and there are many in here about these narratives, these stories that you hear, but then you don't actually have that personal connection, right? So you're holding these stories, these unconscious biases, right? And then you don't want to connect with those people. So you don't have the chance to build your own relationships and disprove those stories. And so those stories continue and create a cycle. When you understand those patterns, you can see the points in the system where, hey, we could just shift this. That's going to be the inroad to getting to those authentic relationships, as opposed to maybe going straight at it where we're going to see some resistance. So for example, one of the great strengths that you all noticed was around having a shared understanding of what you're trying to do and a value in that. So how are some of these silos, tapping into some of those silos and breaking down barriers within organizations? How might that be something you can leverage in order to build new authentic relationships? So just some ideas there. I know we're about to get pulled out, but I hope that this is a tool that feels really accessible and like a great way to have a conversation that surfaces some of these underlying things happening underneath the water point. And of course, I'm available on Slack or by email if you guys have any other questions, and I'll be providing this tool back to you all if you want to keep adding to it. And then there's some other things in the homework folder as well with some more details. But thanks so much for a great conversation.
Thanks, Bailey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Really appreciate just people sticking with it. I know these